me and see me. So it's very nice to have you all together. My name is Jill Timms, and I'm a lecturer at Surrey University, but I've also been on the committee of the Sustainable Church Flowers for a couple of years now. And we've designed this session really part of the response that we've had from the Synod vote that supported Sustainable Church Flowers. And we really have been looking for ways to reach out to people and church teams who perhaps have done a little bit or don't know where to start, and to get people together to answer some questions about this as well. So you can see we've got a mini agenda, but this will be quite an informal session. We will try to include people and your questions. Just on the housekeeping, it's really helpful if you keep yourself on mute, just so we can hear very clearly, if you wouldn't mind doing that. And I think I can help do that as well. So sorry if that feels like I'm shutting you up. It's just so that we can hear clearly as well. Now, we're actually overwhelmed by the fact that 109 people signed up for this session, and we had nearly 70 for our last one as well, which is amazing. We're really pleased that we're managing to reach that many. It does mean that individual introductions are just about impossible, but you should see on your screen that you have a chat function towards the top. And we welcome you and invite you to just introduce yourself, maybe say what church you're from, maybe what role you have, maybe something about how much you do Sustainable Flowers now, just so we get a sense of who is on the meeting and who we're speaking to today. Okay, you'll see as well already on the chat, we have a little bit of a plan as to what we're going to do with our introductions. So I'm going to, as well as welcome you here, we are going to just share a little bit about the theology behind the Sustainable Church Flowers movement. We are also going to talk a little bit about the science and research side, which comes from my work with flowers, as well as that from others. And then we have a couple of florists on our team, and today Lily will share a little bit about how to get started or key things to think about. And we will also hear from Kate, who is part of our committee, about the support that we can offer. I know some of you are already accessing that support, and it's fantastic. We've seen a real uptake in that since that synod motion, but we want to be as clear as possible that you are definitely not on your own. And there are lots of resources, but other ways that we can support you and your particular church as well. The rest of the time then will be for questions, and thank you for those people who actually were forward thinking and have submitted questions with your booking form. That's actually given us a little bit of a list here to make sure that we get through. Some of those are repeated questions, which are fine because it gives us a sense of maybe what you're interested in and struggling with as well. So we'll come on to those. And then if you have any during the session, maybe from what we're talking about, you're welcome to put those in the chat, and we will do our best to come back to those as well. So I hope that sounds okay. Thank you for starting to introduce yourself in the chat. It's amazing to see that we have people from across the UK. And as I say, you are very welcome. I'm now going to pass across to another of the committee members, Benji, who will introduce himself before sharing some thoughts. Thank you, Benji.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Father Benji Tyler, and I'm the Vicar of Chippenham in the county of Wiltshire in the Diocese of Bristol. And I want to add to what Jill has said, so very welcome to this. But I see not just from the UK, Jill, but also we have members joining from Maryland, USA. You're very welcome as well, wherever you are joining us from. So I'm going to just give a little theological rationale as to why we might consider making a sustainable switch. There's so much theology that can be done about this, and is being done across the Christian world. What I offer today is more practical theology. I hope you can relate to it in some way. When we place flowers in church, we aren't merely decorating our building. Uniquely, we are offering part of God's creation back to God. From the very beginning of Scripture, humanity is placed in a garden. In the book of Genesis, Adam is set there to till it and keep it, to care for what ultimately belongs to God. Therefore, the first human vocation is not to build a city or an institution, but to tend a garden. So when flowers are brought into church, a small part of that original Eden garden comes with them. Creation itself is being gathered up and offered back in praise. This is one reason flowers have always found such a natural place in Christian worship. The church has long believed that beauty belongs in the offering we make to God, in music or in architecture, in the vestments that's worn by the priests, and very naturally in flowers. And Christians have long paid attention to flowers, even to their names. It was lovely to hear the Bishop of Norwich speak during the Synod debate in February, where he reminded the church that many of the flowers familiar in England carry centuries of Christian language within their names. Think of Our Lady's bedstraw, St. John's wort, Michaelmas daisies, or Lady's mantle. These names didn't appear by accident. They grew out of a culture in which people saw the natural world as woven into the story of faith. The very naming of flowers reflected a sense that creation and the Christian life belong together. In other words, flowers help Christians throughout the generations to recognize that the world around us is not spiritually empty, but that it is full of reminders of God. And that matters to us today because many people encounter God first not through complicated theology, but through signs, through things that we can see and smell and experience through our senses. Think about that time when you walked into an amazing cathedral or a tiny little parish church in the country. Before a hymn is sung or a sermon is preached, before a prayer is said, the space is already speaking to us. The light, the architecture, the sense of welcome, and very often the flowers. Flowers say that beauty belongs in worship, that creation is good, that the gifts of the earth can become part of our praise. They also remind us of the rhythms of life. Flowers bloom, they fade, and they return again in season. Anyone who works with them knows how they reflect the pattern of the year, what with the first hopeful signs of spring, or the abundance of summer, and the richness of autumn, and the twiggy evergreen simplicity of winter. In that way, they echo something of the whole Christian story itself: life, loss, and new life again. That is why the ministry of church flower arrangers matters so much. Through their work and your work, people encounter beauty before people like me have even spoken a single word. Your arrangements help shape the atmosphere for baptisms and weddings and funerals, feast days and ordinary Sundays. They help mark the great seasons of the Christian year: Advent restraint or Christmas joy, and soon to come, the great celebration of Easter. And they can also help brighten the almost endless monotony of Trinity-tide. And because flowers represent the goodness of creation, it also makes sense that we should think about how we use them. If flowers in church are meant to honour God's creation, then we want the way we arrange them to honour creation as well. That is one reason why Sustainable Church Flowers, and now the Church's Synod, is increasingly encouraging us to move away from floral foam. Although it has been useful for many years, we now know that it is essentially a single-use plastic. It breaks down into microplastics and can pollute soil and waterways. For something that sits right at the heart of creation's beauty, that is clearly not where we want to end up. And you are part of this wonderful move across the country and perhaps even throughout the world, as together we are rediscovering older and more creative methods: chicken wire, reusable structures, moss, water, techniques that work with the natural qualities of the flowers rather than against them. In many ways, it brings us full circle back to the idea that flowers in church should reflect the natural world as faithfully and respectfully as possible. So when you arrange flowers in church, you are not simply filling a space or making things look attractive. You are also helping the church do what it has always done: gather the gifts of the earth and offer them back to God in thanksgiving. And as a vicar, I want to echo many of the speeches given at February's Synod and say thank you. Thank you for all you do and all you give of your time, creativity, and your own gardens. Through your hands, the natural garden of God finds its place in the house of God. And I think that is one of the most beautiful ministries of them all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Benji. That's really inspiring and also shows what is behind all that we are trying to do. And also it underlines the messages that were discussed and actually supported, we're pleased to say, at the General Synod, and gives us an opportunity to reach out for more and more people to understand and take part in this movement as well. We know from your answers, as you booked on here, that about half of you have already watched the video that we produced. We had a great day together working on this video that was then shown at General Synod. If you haven't already seen it, I've popped the link in the chat, but it can also be a resource to reach out either to the rest of your flower team or to your church or to your congregation to help them to understand what it is you're trying to do. My contribution today is to bring in a little bit of the research that our principles have been based on. And as I mentioned, I'm at Surrey University, but I'm a researcher on the sociology of workers' rights and also the environment. And actually, flowers has been a key area for my research for about 2 decades now. So to give you a very brief overview, some of the issues around flowers are just not known by many people. These include where we get our flowers from, and about nearly 90% of the flowers that come into and are used in the UK are from overseas. Many of these could well have been flown, so we have quite a high carbon footprint for those flowers before we talk about anything else. Flowers that are grown out of season, even if these don't travel very far, have to be sort of forced, so are often grown under very big greenhouse glass where the greenhouses are heated. So the energy that goes into that even if the transport is less, is again a high carbon footprint. And even since we ran this meeting a couple of weeks ago for the first time of our Lenten series, we know that energy costs and prices and security are even more of an issue globally. So what we promote is flowers that are grown in season, so they're normal for that type of year, and they are also local. So they are, as close as possible to where you are, representative of nature outside of your churches and allowing you to connect to those different seasons as they come through the year. This is also less likely to mean that they have had a high chemical use, which can be problematic on the flowers, not only for those workers at the flower farms, but also for other people who come in contact with them. Even where there are rules about the chemicals that can be used, they're not always enforced. And more research is coming out about the dangers that they can have long-term on health, as well as chemicals and also the energy costs. There's also water costs. Flowers are incredibly thirsty. That's not just in their growing, but also in their transportation. And actually, we know that a lot of the countries who are high exporters, so these tend to be countries around the equator, so natural sun around that space. However, they tend to be the ones that really need a lot of water, the countries that actually suffer from droughts and have problems with their water supply. And this isn't an essential product for our everyday living, as is food and water as well. So by using flowers that are grown local to us, we're not contributing to that sort of exporting of water to the north or to richer countries as well. And I would also argue on a bigger scale that we see this as well in food, that many of those countries and the farms could be better spent in terms of growing food for their local inhabitants, the people who live in Ethiopia or Kenya or Colombia, these places that we get a lot of flowers from. So we have a few different issues there in terms of the product, but there's also social issues. We can include in that impacts on communities. There have been land grabs with governments giving flower fields over to external importers, external businesses who then own the farms and export things, with people, communities not have access into land that they previously had. And we also know that there are problems in some farms around sexual discrimination and harassment. Health and safety can be an issue in terms of not just the chemicals, but sometimes the thorns. And of course, there are some better farms. There are ones that are working to be fairer trading. But in the flower industry, we have terrible labeling. So it's very hard for you to make decisions based on actually the knowledge of where something comes from and how it has been grown as well. So from the Sustainable Churches Flowers, the message is about keeping this simple, seasonal and local where possible. And we talk a lot about doing good things, doing better things and the best things, but trying to avoid the bad. So there won't always be a perfect solution. The issues are, of course, complicated. However, by knowing a little bit more about that background and by asking questions, it is more possible to make decisions that fit with that sustainable policy that the Church of England has focused on now, as well as what probably your church is trying to do anyway in moving towards net zero. Certainly for a lot of us, if you buy flowers in your weekly shop, they could well be the highest carbon footprint compared to everything else that you're buying. So having this awareness can really help. The final thing I'll say is just about plastics, which Benji introduced beautifully. Trying to avoid single-use plastics can make a big difference. So this can be in using flowers that are grown locally that you don't need to have plastic around, but it can also be in those displays by moving away from those things that have single-use plastic and can break down into microplastics, so isn't always good for the people who are working with them as well, and can get into the watercourse and things like that too. To again, the simpler techniques that just require natural sticks and different options, such as simply water. I am not a florist. I should say, and always do say, I do, though, organise the flower rota at my own church in the village that I am. And we've managed to move towards this for nearly 3 years now. But I do appreciate the difficulties that can come and the changes that are needed both practically and in design that this can come from. So I'd like to introduce Lily now, who is a florist, an amazing florist and part of our committee, to share with you a few of the ideas that need to be thought about when you come to make your displays. Lily, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me. There's obviously a lot of screens going on here, but anyway, I am here if you can't. I am Lily. I am from Worcestershire, and I've been doing flowers for about over 10 years now. Sort of all started off, my grandmother, I won't bore you too long, was a sort of village florist, self-taught, but sort of did WI and local flower groups. And I'll always remember she had the most beautiful garden, mostly done from cuttings of Chelsea Flower Show and probably other places like that, which she shouldn't have been taking cuttings from, but had the most wonderful garden. And I think the main thing that stuck with me is her ability to go outside and make the most of what she had, and being content with that. I then went to do a floristry course at Pershore College. So it was a 2-year course, sort of 2 days a week, where the dreaded floral foam was used and taught, and all the basics of conditioning, which I'll get into a little bit more, the importance of that, was taught. But again, I would go with things from Nan's garden. I would have to buy things from a flower shop or the supermarket at that time to sort of to bulk it out. But the main thing for me at that time was making the most of the foliage. And I think that really sort of stemmed, it's always encouraged me to look at that now. I was then introduced to Shane. He's from Worcestershire too. So a lovely lady said, "Oh, you must have heard of Shane Connolly." Well, I hadn't at the time. And after a quick Google, realised it was somebody that I really should reach out to. So after travelling down to London from Worcestershire on the train, I went to meet with Candy, who's on the call, a founding member, Shane's wife, and Shane. And I always, I was sort of telling him about my course and what I'd learnt. And he said he didn't care about what I'd been taught. It was all about my approach to nature and how I saw the outer world really with flowers and gardens, and that the importance was through the material and not the sort of rules and regulations that a lot of flower clubs and I think schools do teach. Again, I do know the importance of making an arrangement that is sturdy and safe, but it's not the sort of focal lines and the rule of 3 and things like that, to sort of break away from that and having the confidence to do that. So Shane, again, I've worked with him for about 10 or sort of 8 years now, probably. And for us in our work, we've just had, I'm looking outside in our studio, we've got a funeral tomorrow and a lunch. And I've had the most amazing delivery of blossoms and amelanchias and fritillaries and hyacinths and all the beautiful things that we're surrounded with at this time. So a sense of season is what Shane and we take to our flower arranging, and a sense of place. We could all go outside and walk along and see people's gardens, be it in the countryside or in cities. I know it's not as easy for everybody to get hold of British flowers in cities and things like that. But again, Kate Hurst will tell you a little bit more about how we can source flowers in the more difficult areas in a little while. I think the main thing for us is to also manage expectations of what church flowers should be. you know, everybody expects there to be a sort of triangle shape at the front of the church, and that's what you must have. But I'm not sure that that's ever been, you know, it's not in the rules, or, you know, we should be confident enough to sort of say to people, why can't it just be an arrangement of foliage at this time of year, or in the winter months when flowers aren't readily available? So it's having that confidence to sort of break the norm, and managing expectations of people who might feel you need to have the lilies and things like that, or the roses in February, which just should not be happening. For us, it's experimenting with different types of containers, and obviously we all know the traditional sort of church flower stands which fit the Oasis dishes, which are taped on, you know, that's a sort of the norm in a church. But if there's any possibility of going to charity shops or asking, you know, as a team, we can also suggest containers that we would encourage you to sort of purchase and invest in. It's an investment, something that can be used over and over again. A larger urn container, or which fits a simple bucket of water, which the video that Jill has shared on our YouTube of the Synod video will show that the simplicity of a bucket just with water. You know, it doesn't need to have be anything fancy. Stripping back to water. Chicken wire, another great thing to have in your flower cupboards. A little trickier to arrange in, and some people don't like it as much. But for different types of mechanics, we've got a great resource on our website, which show them different mechanics. There's also a wonderful book by, oh gosh, someone might have to help me here. We'll put a link into the chat. It's a guide to floral mechanics, which we couldn't recommend enough. And as Jill said, it's ultimately good, better, and best for when you're arranging and choosing your flowers. You know, the best option is to have all British, all local, and grown within a 5-mile radius, or, you know, very close to your church. The good option is to have all the foliage and the flowers, but perhaps there's a couple of elements that you've had to have imported or a little bit further afield. But the importance of that is to have flowers that are in season, you know, that haven't needed all the heat to be grown at this time of year. So tulips from Holland, say, rather than all British tulips. But like Jill said, also ignoring the bad. We really don't want to be using floral foam or single-use plastics of any form. There's obviously a lot of different types of foam, PHOAM, and different single-use materials, which, yes, might be sustainable and are better, but again, they are a single-use material. Another thing that Shane always tries to encourage with our work is enjoying the abundance of less. Strip back and not having to have an arrangement with 40 different stems in. You know, we can enjoy the beauty of a simple arrangement, and enjoy the experimentation of getting a bit creative with what you use at different times of year. You know, vegetables and plants in autumn and winter. It doesn't always have to be a super flowery arrangement. And I think do make the most of our social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. They really are a vital and hugely beneficial way to learn. And so we do encourage anybody to please share any, tag us in all of our social medias that we can share and help spread the word of sustainable flowers. Thank you, Jill. So I'm not sure who we're passing on to.
No, that's okay. We're going to pass on to Kate next, who'll tell you a little bit more about the support. And we're also putting links in the chat in case you haven't got them as well. Thank you, Kate.
Right. Hi, guys. I'm Kate Hurst. I'm a florist, flower grower and church warden in the Shelsleys, and helped take the Synod motion last February. But I'm also very much involved in helping the floral ambassadors and coordinating those. So floral ambassadors are members of florists, really, that are based all over the country and can help support you and guide you and give you 10 demos and give you workshops in your area, and will happily do that. I think there's about 50 of you all over the United Kingdom. If you just email us, I think now the table is now on the website, isn't it, Benji? That we've got all the floral ambassadors on the website. Yeah. So there should be a list of all 50 ambassadors showing where they cover, so that you can just find your local ambassador, approach them, and they will happily do a demo for you or workshop for you, or just to explain a few things in more detail. So I would recommend you approach those. And as Lily mentioned, we've also got Instagram, we've got Facebook now, where we've got a nice group where you can just chat to people, ask people for information, get some ideas about certain things, which has just come up too. We've got a YouTube, which is where you found your synod video. So we've got lots and lots of videos on there now. Shane doing all sorts of exciting things in all sorts of places. We're going to try and get more and more videos on there so that people can just see how you can do all sorts of different things. We've got leaflets as well, which we can hand out. Just drop us an email, and we can send those out to you so that you can then give them to your church team, any of your other flower members. And then the other thing I think we wanted to mention was how to get locally grown flowers if you haven't got any maybe in your parishioners' gardeners. So we all say try and get them from gardeners if you can, but if you're like in the middle of a city, that's not always possible. So there is an organisation called Flowers from the Farm, which is like the NFU for flower farmers. It's much nicer than the NFU. And it's an umbrella organisation for all the flower growers in the whole of the United Kingdom. I think there's about 1,000 of us. And most of them will provide you with a bucket of all sorts of flowers. If you just pop along and ask them, can I just have a bucket of flowers? They might charge you less if you're a church. It's worth talking to each one because each one is an individual flower farm, so they will all have their own ideas. But it's definitely worth finding your local flower grower and see if they can help you with some flowers. Might have some extra flowers they might happily donate. It depends on what they might have. So approach them on the first port of call if you've got a big event, say for instance. There's also an organisation called the British Flowers Market, which is helping to promote again British flowers generally. And they also then were then suggesting a thing called decorating your churchyard, really. We really would like you to start planting out bits of your churchyard. You're increasing the your eco award there, aren't you? You're making the biodiversity much better. Even if it's just a couple of shrubs, you know, an ivy or a senecio or a lilac or something that you can use on a regular basis. And we have now got a list of recommended foliage that you can plant and recommended flowering plants that you can put into your churchyard that are easy to grow, that don't need lots of cosseting and tending, that you can just plant and just go and pick as and when. We're going to be putting that onto what we've now launched, Substack, which is being controlled by one of our ambassadors, Tricia, and that will have a whole load of information like newsletters, recommended products, all sorts of interesting information on there so that you can find out and get some more information on there for you. So there's quite a lot of stuff there you can find. And then the other thing I think I wanted to mention before I go is we've now launched what's called our award plaques of, I can't call it, what can we call it? Yes, I'm going to let Jill talk about that, but that's something else which we want you to sort of get involved in, I think, isn't it, Jill? I'm going to pass you over to Jill.
That's
Yes.
right. Thanks so much for that, Kate. And unbeknownst to you, you've actually already answered a few of the questions that people had as well. So that's great going. And please do pop any questions that you have in the chat as we're talking as well. I will just briefly introduce, because I am very pleased and proud of what the group's achieved with this. We have developed this sort of award scheme whereby churches can apply to get 3 different types of level of award to really be recognised for what you've achieved so far, but also to try to encourage to keep moving towards that better and best as well. So very briefly, there's a supporters level. And I would say, actually, because you are coming onto this today and you're trying to get your head and practice around this, you probably already qualify for the supporters plaque. Then we have an advocates plaque. That one is a little bit more where you've put this into practice. And there's a full criteria of details, but finally is the champion award, at which point you've pretty much got everything covered, including doing outreach work to other people to help spread the word about sustainable flowers. So I'm going to pop an email in the chat that if your church might be interested in this, we can send you more details. And, you know, this is going to be really gathering speed, shall we say, yeah, gathering a rolling stone gathers moss, doesn't it? Because I'm going to come on to moss, but over this year. So we're really hoping that people will work with their ambassadors to apply for this. And it's not just, oh, isn't that nice? The reason to actually develop this has been for helping churches to have those conversations with their congregations and with their local communities to explain why it's important to have sustainable flowers and to get the other groups actually signed into this. So here, for example, we have an allotment association and a gardening club. They will now, when they can, donate flowers and foliage to a donations bucket in our church porch, and they know they have to be there for Friday morning. There are other groups that I know have started growing their own, as Kate mentioned, and it's all these different techniques that we share with you on our Instagram, on our website, on our Facebook group as well. So I'll put that in the chat in a moment. I'm going to turn now to your questions, and I will check the meeting chat in a minute, but some that really stood out that people had asked, we had 2 or 3 people ask us about moss. And we do often mention moss as a potential to be used in flower arrangements, but we are also very aware that a lot of the research shows that moss is an amazing creature. Moss is amazing for contributing to ecological systems, and so we don't encourage people to go out and forage huge amounts of this, or even to purchase lots of this commercially grown moss as well. Actually, quite often people can donate moss from their own gardens for what it is that you would need. But it's one of those things, again, asking yourself, why do I need this? What do I need it for? And do I actually need something, or can I design that out? The other thing that Kate has already mentioned a little bit is about getting your flowers. And somebody asked whether we might be working with flower farmers to encourage them to offer special discounts for flower teams. And I'm pleased to say some already do. If you look on some of the resources like Kate's mentioned, let's say Flowers from the Farm, you can put in your postcode and find who is local to you. That gives you the opportunity to get in touch with them, have a look at their website. And if they don't currently offer anything for churches, get in touch with them, maybe go and visit them, explain what you're trying to do. We've really heard of people having great conversations, but also relationships with local growers. On the last session, people were encouraged to, when they do flower demonstrations, which can be a big fundraiser, actually maybe get the local flower farmer to donate their flowers. They can get a little bit of a thanks for that and an acknowledgement for that, but working with them can really help. I'm going to throw a couple of questions out to our team now. One in particular is a seasonal question: how to decorate the Easter cross without using oasis. So any ideas about that, possibly Lily, Kate or Benji?
I've seen Easter crosses that are literally just used for Easter Day and the week following, and people have been invited to bring a flower from their garden to put on it, and they're pinned on or stuck on somewhere, or even just twined on, and it doesn't matter that they don't last because they're not in water. The action of bringing something of yourself to the cross seems to be beautiful enough. I've seen that done in many places. If I might just say, another one is how to decorate the Paschal candle sustainably without an oasis ring. Again, I've seen incredible creativity in the churches that I have worked with to make the transition. And actually, chicken wire in a bowl, a circular bowl of some kind. Even the old foam ring bowl it works fine as long as the stuff is still in water. You can use those little reusable plastic tubes that delicate flowers or foreign flowers have come in. Lots of churches have them, or even just little vases around. But again, I've seen so much creativity that we invite you to be inventive.
So in the past, I have actually done, I think, a cross, and we just used a couple of planks of wood. Actually, it was quite rustic. But I just put a little tiny mossage in the middle of the cross, which is wrapped in twine. I did lose a tiny amount of moss. It was from raked from my lawn, don't worry. And then I just stuffed the flowers into the moss because it's not for very long. So you can do that if you still want to use the cross bit. Just put it in the middle. I can show a picture. But yeah, that worked quite well. A little bit of moss. I know. Shouldn't see it, should we? But yeah.
I also want to thank our audience because we're having suggestions put forward in the chat as well about what different people do. That's amazing. And this is what it's all about, trying to build a community together so that we can support each other. So please do keep your ideas coming there. I'm going to take a couple more. So somebody's been asking about wedding parties and external florists and trying to make sure that you're working well with them, or what we do with brides and grooms as well. I'm pleased to say that on our website, we have some resources already for this that some churches use, which can be given out when people book a wedding. Actually suggesting sustainable church flowers. You can also make that personal to your church, maybe saying, that we are a champion of sustainable church flowers and this is how we do things. The less plastic, the better, of course. And it could well be that having your vicar on board with this and making sure they know that, so that when they are talking to potential couples, and this would also go for funerals as well, being able to pass on information and suggest things in a supportive way. People might never have heard of this or know that there could be potential problems. And it's that about explaining why. And I think, Lily, you said before that a lot of brides wouldn't want to cause problems to the environment, but Absolutely. They don't know about it.
I think a lot of the time people just don't know. And I think when you strip it back and explain it to them, so many people now want seasonal foods. It's, it's a huge thing with restaurants that it's farm to table and close by and local produce. That when you explain this to brides and to couples and families, people don't want to hurt the environment. So it's a simple explanation. And with our resources that we can share online that Benji's very kindly put together, I think people, are so willing and wanting to participate that it's hopefully a rarity. There may be the odd couple you might have to persuade a little bit. But, as a whole, we find that people totally understand.
Yeah. And I think this hits on two other issues as well. And one is your church's relationship with local florists as well. And certainly a couple of people have pointed it out. There was and there has been and there continues to be some florist pushback in terms of moving towards sustainability. I'm very pleased to say that as part of this group, we have been reaching out to the florist industry. We met with them, with Bishop Martin before the Synod event. We now have more meeting with them booked. In my own research, we also work with florists to be able to help support them to have options that are most sustainable as well. But on your local level, when you or if you develop a policy for weddings or for funerals, it might be worth making a a visit or passing that on to florists in your area to explain what you're doing and that you want to carry on being able to work with them. So trying a gentle approach and to get people on board, I think, can be helpful. And I do recognise, though, that my research for 20 years has been trying to change things in the flower industry, and it has been quite slow. I think we're seeing change now, but it again is educating people and helping work together with it. One thing that I wanted to pick up on, I'm sure we do have ambassadors in Leeds and York. Someone was asking about that, so do look on our website. You were also asking about foraging. And I think it is a tricky subject. When we talk about foraging, mostly we're talking about taking what you can from the local area where you have permission to do so. So this could be within your churchyard. Obviously, not all churches have gardens, but it could be from your congregation, local groups. I've even heard of local parks being able to supply churches as well. So we ask that people think about that mindfully, and as well, think about the options that you might have and talk to your congregations about that too. Building up those relationships with flower farmers can help, but as is acknowledged, this is quite a controversial area for all sorts of different things, and that's where keeping it as simple as possible, depending on your situation, can help. And certainly I would reiterate again, our network of ambassadors are across the country. Don't think we've hit America yet, sorry, but our ambassador network is across the country, and the idea is that we try to have people who are local to you, who might help with those connections and help with your particular situation. And that helps as well with knowledge about buying local, which I can see somebody's just posted about too. I will just go back to the questions that were submitted before. Somebody asked whether we could do one of these sessions for particular times of the year. They mentioned Christmas flowers, which seems a long time ago, but we are very interested to know what will help you. So it would be great to get in touch with us and tell us what stage you're at. It might be an ambassador can help you, or it could be that we can have more of a reach across the country and put one of these sessions on for particular themes. I would, though, encourage you, first of all, to have a look what resources are already there, because we have recorded quite a lot. Today's session is being recorded as well, but also we have that Instagram and Facebook page where often the discussions are about what's seasonal at that time. Somebody did point out, though, that not everyone is tech savvy, and asking their question for people in their team that don't use this type of thing. Do we have anything we can give them? So some of the things could be printed out from our website, but we also have the leaflets that I believe Kate mentioned earlier. And if you send us an email, we can arrange to have some of those sent out, or your local ambassador might have a supply as well. So, oh, yes, somebody has just posted, thank you, David, about funeral directors. It has been a tricky space, and I can see there that you've not had great response from local funeral directors. This is something we're working on at a national basis as well. And we're actually linking with groups in different parts of the world, such as Australia, who've done some great work around this area. We do encourage you to make sure your vicar is on board for having those conversations. It's obviously much more of a delicate time than a wedding, for example, but we do hope to be working with the National Association of Funeral Directors to try to draw this attention. Benji and Kate, please do come on in and share about that as well.
Yes, I say we're working. SCF is working on a draft suggested proposal that can be adapted locally. It's been incredible to me how strict the funeral industry can be. So, for example, if you've got a natural burial ground in your area, if you go on their website, they will have a very, very clear policy on what can and cannot be put into their burial grounds, how bodies are to be disposed of, how flowers are to be used, but what bulbs can be planted. I think the Church of England perhaps in its drive to be all things to all people, has perhaps pussyfooted a little bit around the issue. And there's no reason why we can't follow sustainable burial grounds example and say, actually, these are our beliefs, and we invite you to subscribe to them.
Thanks for that, Benji. Yeah, it is definitely ongoing work. That will probably keep on going for quite a while, but as Benji suggests, there are other movements. It's not just from the churches that are taking part in this as well. I'm just flicking through the questions because I think we've mostly answered the ones that came in advance, apart from the theme of pedestals. Lily, you mentioned pedestals earlier. But there's a few questions about how to arrange a pedestal without using Oasis, and a few people saying that their pedestal was specifically designed for a particular vase container that would have Oasis in it. Mm-hmm. Any specific pedestal advice that we can offer?
Absolutely. Well, we're making one for this funeral tomorrow, which my colleague Ollie, I can see him filming for me to add. I'm on Instagram this week, so I was meant to be doing it, but he's very kindly doing it as we speak. So I will be sharing that this week on Instagram. Again, it's more of the container that we've got. We've got just a square plinth that we're arranging on for this one. It is investing sometimes in new pedestals and containers. And again, I know this is a bit of an outlay at the start, but ultimately it's going to help you in the long run and something you going to use time and time again. The stability of the ones which are made for the little dishes just don't give them a huge amount of scope. However, Shane has done that demonstration on our synod video, which was one of those pedestals with a black bucket, which just simply placed on top. So it is possible, and in that was water. I'm not sure if he did a hand tie in that one. He might have just done a hand tie of foliage, or making a network of natural stems with all your foliage, which it's much easier than floral foam. It really is. And I think once you get the confidence, which hopefully our Instagrams and Facebook and discussions and perhaps some demonstrations from your local ambassadors, you will begin to realise that it's not a difficult change. And one to hopefully encourage the rest of your flower team to get on board with as well.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, Lily. That's exactly the kind of thing that our ambassadors like to demonstrate, and I think that's what they get asked to do most of the time. And we encourage people to actually give it a go during their workshops. It doesn't matter if it's a safe space; they can have a try, and they often find it actually quite relaxed. They quite enjoy being able to do it in chicken wire. So yeah, definitely encourage some of your ambassadors to come along and show you and not feel intimidated and try it. I think that's the important thing, isn't it? To try it.
Absolutely. And when arranging in water, the ease of scooping, which Shane again shows in this video, of scooping, everyone, I do understand the sort of the heaving of big arrangements and big sort of containers off the pedestals. Well, when you do arrange with just water and no chicken wire, the ability to just scoop up the arrangement and sort of tip it out onto a dust sheet or something like that, it's a much easier way again of pulling it out of the mess that Oasis or floral foam can leave. And chicken wire, sometimes it's tricky to get the stem, they all get sort of caught in there. So everyone has their preferences, but we do sort of encourage water as being the easiest way for a pedestal with the right container. That is the crucial part.
Yeah, and it's something that our ambassadors could have a look at what you've got and
Absolutely.
Suggest things as well. Speaking of disposal, we have had that key question of those people who are actually in possession of floral foam at the moment, and there's no good thing to do with it. This is one of the problems with it. There is no good thing to do with it. It does have to go in landfill and hopefully secured in something like Benji said, a sort of bin bag so that it's not flying away as well. And a few people had asked, how do I persuade the flower team? On our website, we have a video of some of the research that was done with floral foam about its impact on the watercourse, its impact on deers and wildlife. And so getting them to watch that might help persuade them. However, there was a question I'd forgotten about the alternatives to floral foam. Lily already mentioned that there are a lot more developing that are posited as alternatives. But to be honest, what we have found over this period is that all of them require energy to produce in their manufacturing, in their transportation, in their disposal as well. So where at all possible, our message is simple: to avoid those sorts of single-use options and to go back to the basics. It is really good to see what sort of questions and problems that you are having. The idea from Jenny, I think it is, about using jam jars with fresh water is another one, and another one we've seen used really well with funerals. I noticed the comment about the £600 for the funeral spelling out. One of the good arguments is that this could save your church money, save your flower team money, especially if you're able to get some donations as well. So I think it is partly about thinking about your own church context, getting used some of our resources and getting us to help support you as well going forward. Now, have I missed any more questions that are on there from our team, do we think? If anyone has still got a burning question, do please just repost it. We are recording this session. We'll also put the thing together. Oh, thank you, Candy, for drawing attention to that. If moss is not foraged, what do we do? Yep, so foraging from woodland is what's frowned upon. So it's that, yeah, sorry, Kate, go ahead.
That's just a good point. I'm doing the RHS show next month, and they told me quite specifically I had to use cultivated moss. So I've always used Welsh moss, which is quite a nice sustainable way, but I was told actually that you can now get cultivated moss. So something they obviously trying to highlight the fact that they are now growing it on a commercial way to avoid people going off and foraging it, I suppose. So yes, there is that out there. You never knew, did you? There you go.
And I can guarantee that every vicarage lawn in the entire country is more moss than grass. And every vicar will be delighted if you were to take some of it.
That's a very good and practical point. Thank you there. I think it does highlight that these issues are complicated. There's new research coming out, new guidelines that are coming out, but I have never used moss in any of our church designs. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but keeping it to what's available to you. There's no single thing that you definitely must do. It is about the choices that you make in terms of good, better, and best. Trying to avoid the bad is what we're encouraging you to do. I'm sorry that we have to bring this to a close now. Again, we thank you so much for joining us. I've remembered that I told you I would put the email address in if you're interested in the church plaques. So I am good as my word doing that right now. There you go. So it's a slightly different one to our general one because we're keeping that particularly for the church plaques. And we do see those starting conversations when people come into church. I will also just mention we've got 2 new people on our team because they were asking questions about that. Quite young people who are interested in giving it a go because of the sustainability angle. So good luck with that. Thank you all for coming. Do watch out on our website and Instagram, and we'll hope to hear more from you. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.